12:04 on June 22nd, 2023, and I'm calling to order the meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Michelle Jackson, and I am chair of the commission. I will turn it over to Wendy before we get into our agenda for today to tell you how you can join today's meeting.
Chair Jackson, and thank you to everyone who is here with us live and those who are joining via WebEx or watching virtually. If you have any questions, please feel free to send a chat to the host on WebEx, but don't use that for public comment. I'll explain more about that in a minute. Welcome to the Probation Oversight Commission. Real public participation in our meetings is our main goal. We welcome your comments in writing or live. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item and at the end of the meeting for items not on the agenda. For items that are on the agenda, Chair Jackson will introduce them. We'll hear a presentation, then we'll take public comment before the commission discusses the item or takes any action. We will make sure that we get to the end of the meeting on time, and so Chair Jackson has the opportunity to determine how much time is allowed, but generally we do 2 minutes per person. I'd ask that you please stop speaking immediately when your time ends, just to help that go more smoothly and be respectful of each other and the forum. If you're pre-registered to speak, we'll have your name on a list, but if you're on WebEx, please still use the little raise your hand icon. That's the little hand button at the bottom of the screen. If you're calling in on the telephone and you dial *3, that will raise your hand for us. If you'd like to make your comment in writing and you get it in to us before 5 p.m. today, we'll include it with the public record for this meeting. Our email address is info@poc.lacounty.gov. As I said, please don't send your public comment in the chat. The commissioners won't see it, and it won't be part of the public record. Our meeting is being broadcast live today to YouTube, I think. Is that right? Yes, to YouTube. But we are no longer live streaming on Facebook Live, so you need to watch it on YouTube. And then we'll upload the YouTube link to Facebook afterwards. And there's no engagement with users on those platforms. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at LA County POC for more information. Una cordial bienvenida a personas que prefieren hacer sus comentarios en español. Tendrán 4 minutos, 2 para su comentario y 2 para traducción. Y yo le puedo traducir al inglés o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Al iniciar su comentario, nomás avísenos que quiere hablar en español. Okay, so I'm going to call the roll. We are actually still waiting for Commissioner Canales. We're expecting her any minute, and we'll indicate it for the minutes when she arrives. Commissioners, please unmute yourself. Actually, I think you're already in. And respond to the roll call. Commissioner Frankie Carrillo?
Here.
Commissioner Sean Garcia-Lays?
Here.
Commissioner Melinda Kakani?
Here.
Commissioner Sam Lewis? Commissioner Don Meredith?
Here.
Commissioner Eduardo Mundo?
Here.
Commissioner Diane Terry?
Here.
Chair Ishay Jackson.
I am here.
Chair Jackson, we have a quorum and are expecting full attendance, and I will turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wendy. Let's proceed with item number 2, which is approval of May 25th minutes. If you'd like to comment on this item, feel free to us at the podium here to my left and members of the audience to your right, or raise your hand if you've joined us virtually. Commissioners, can I have a motion to approve this motion? Sorry, a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Commissioner Meredith, seconded by
Can second that.
Vice Chair Kakani.
Any comment online? Please raise your hand using the raise your hand function if you want to make a comment. Nope. And no public comment in the room.
To go. Okay, great. So any changes to the minutes, commissioners? Seeing no motion here. Please unmute yourselves and let's vote. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 3. We will discuss and take appropriate action on changing the meeting frequency of the POC to once a month. And that is going to be on the second Thursday of each month from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. The proposed schedule for 2023 is attached to the agenda, so please take a moment to review that when you have a chance. We're doing this to encourage attendance, save resources, preserve resources and for staff capacity issues. And so we'll be holding, we're going from holding 2 meetings a month and moving to 1 meeting a month in hopes that'll help us achieve some other things. And so we will always, or at least try to hold our meetings here at St. Anne's. They will continue to be held in the virtual and in-person format to maximize attendance. And so we will have a later vote to see if that change is going to be made official. But yeah, that's why we would to make that change. Do we have any written or
No one had registered for this item, and we don't have any written public comment. Anyone raise your hand or come up to the podium in the room? No? Okay, no public comment.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments before I propose a motion? Change of the Commissioner Carrillo.
My only concern is having a break actually part of the minute. I think for many folks, just either a bathroom break or just to stretch and kind of forward. So I'm not sure if it's an intermission we need to talk about or call it a break. But I would say that it would be officially part of the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we would have to take a break, but if you wanted to be a part of the motion, sure, it would be in the sort of the middle of the meeting. And so if it starts at 9 and ends at 1, what time would this?
Well, I think it may depend a little bit on how the agenda is
going.
proceeding to be able to take it at a time when there's a natural break rather
Okay.
than setting a specific time, but maybe we could have a goal.
Yeah, let's say from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. with a 15-minute break midway.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other commissioners? Answer questions about this proposal, this motion? All right, so I'm going to state the motion. Is it ready? Okay, so I move to amend the bylaws of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission to reflect a change in the schedule of regular meetings to once per month occurring from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with a 15-minute break midway through the meeting on the second Thursday of each month. Can I have a commissioner second this?
I second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Garcia-Lays. Thank you. Any further before we move to a vote? No activity?
Okay, commissioners, please vote yes, no, or abstain. Commissioner Carrillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Yes.
Commissioner Kakani?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis? Commissioner Meredith? Commissioner Mundo?
Yes.
Commissioner Terry?
Yes.
And Chair Jackson.
Yes.
So the motion passes 8-0 with Commissioner Canales being absent.
We will now move on to agenda item number 4. We'll discuss and take appropriate action on the changes the probation department has made to reduce contraband in the juvenile facilities, to provide effective substance use disorder treatment, and to increase the availability and accessibility of Narcan. So this issue has been brought before the POC a few times, and we were refreshed on this issue this week when we learned that several youth had been hospitalized as the result of ingesting of substance. There's been overdoses, sickness, and there's been death, right? So while we are satisfied with the access to and the administration of the Narcan, we are deeply concerned and frankly disgusted by the ongoing issue. So the main question I believe I'm left with is how? You know, how are the dangerous things continuing to enter the facilities? And more importantly, how many youth have to die for something to be done about it? And so here to speak on this issue are Bureau Chiefs Kevin Woods and Scott Sanders. They're here with us to discuss this matter and hopefully at least answer the former question that I posed. Eric Bates from OIG, that's the Office of Inspector General, is also here to discuss the research that he's done and he's conducted looking into the issue. And we also have one of our staff members here presenting on this item, Dr. Sarah Gongora, who will share with us some initial thoughts about the POC's role in ensuring that a strong substance abuse disorder program or services available to our youth who are in custody. And so before I turn it over to Bureau Chief Woods, I'd like to encourage you to look over the two attachments to the agenda associated with this item. One is the recent report back written by the Department of Youth Development about substance use disorder programs in the facilities. And the other one is a pretty detailed log of the contraband retrieved through searches since January. And we appreciate that the probation department has furnished that in great detail for us. So Bureau Chief Woods, the floor is yours.
Good, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to talk about our efforts within our two juvenile facilities in regard to, first, the training of Narcan by all of our officers. At Central Juvenile Hall, based upon the statistics were provided to this commission. At Central, we have up to almost 93% of the staff, active duty staff, that are trained in Narcan. At Barry J, currently, we fall short of any type of significant training of Narcan. We're at approximately 42% as of the printing of these documents yesterday. However, we have ongoing training where we have 100% of the active staff scheduled to attend Narcan training. However, due to our significant staffing shortages, that training, which has been planned and ongoing for several months, much of it has been canceled as a result of the officers of the day, the director on duty, having to reallocate those staff out of training. And we're not talking about any significant number of staff in the training. You may have 3 to 4 staff in the training, and they were scheduled almost a daily basis, Monday through Friday. But even those 3 to 4 staff had to be reallocated to supervision posts or into our juvenile units to support things such as getting youth to school, all right, and also providing adequate supervision in our living units. And that is how significant our shortages are. Those staffing shortages are, of course, of concern to this commission and to the communities that we serve, definitely. And it is an issue that us in the probation department that we have to resolve. We have put forth efforts by reallocating staff from field offices and from other operations within our department to increase the numbers of supervision staff in our juvenile facilities. Despite those efforts, we are still falling significantly short of any quality staffing numbers that will allow us to get youth to our medical appointments, get them to school, and get them to the recreation that is needed on a daily basis. That's how our staffing numbers are turning out. As a result of those staffing numbers, supervision in our units has waned, which has led, all right, to many of the incidents of youth ingesting unknown substances and requiring subsequent hospitalization. As it was discussed earlier with the weekend events, that was one of the main contributing factors, the lack of supervision. And in those cases where there may have been supervision, the supervision was quite questionable, which in those matters, they are under investigation. And as far as our continuing efforts in getting all of our staff trained in Narcan, so that when we have such instances that our Narcan will be administered, we will continue to do so. We're hoping for a June 30th deadline to get it completed. But as our staffing numbers exist today, I don't think we're going to reach that particular June 30th goal. But I want to assure everyone here that we have staffed every one of those individuals. All right, it's approximately 150 of them at Barry J. Nardoff Juvenile Hall. Each one of them has been scheduled to attend the training. either on an AM shift, PM shift, or a 10 to 6. And again, those numbers have been impacted. The training numbers have been impacted because of our shortages. And that's on every shift, including the 10 to 6. 10 to 6 numbers are so short sometimes that people are pulled from that training as well and sent into the living units to provide adequate supervision in those units as well. So that is definitely one of the contributing factors that is causing some of the, that's contributing to the substance use in our juvenile facilities. In regards to programming, right now we do have programming ongoing through both mental health, and the programming I'm referring to is substance use disorder programming that is provided by both the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Public Health through the Substance Abuse Prevention and Control, where they are utilizing their resources to provide substance abuse, individualized substance abuse treatment and counseling, and in some cases, group treatment and counseling to the youth, specifically those youth in our SYTF units and also our non-dispositional youth at both Central and at Berry J. Any questions about the information I just provided?
Not at
Because
this,
maybe-
not,
maybe-
I'm sorry, not quite. We're gonna ask for public comment and then we'll
Okay,
for,
all right.
for comments from the commissioners after
All right.
that happens. Huh? We will now hear from Eric Bates of OIG as soon as we get. Text set up.
Hello,
Better.
hello. Good afternoon, everyone. With the Office of Inspector General, good afternoon, Commissioners. We are in the midst of providing our third report to the board, issue of contraband introduction to facilities. That is due by 7th. Midst of viewing these areas that we looked at to see what improvements may have been made since our last look. So I can't go into specifics because, as I said, we're still compiling the information report. But I can say that there seems to be a marked improvement relating to the introduction of pills. There was a big problem with fentanyl being introduced into the facilities. And during the last 2 months that we'll be covering, there seems to be a drastic reduction of that at Berry J. I was looking at the probation department's report, and it's consistent with our report. Not have the information for Central as of yet, but at Berry J, there seems to be a big difference. There was still a high level of manufactured weapons that were found inside the facilities. But the good news is, at least with the introduction of drugs, it seems to have been brought down a lot. So that was encouraging. We have been noticing some of the information coming from Central. There's a concern about screening at the front, at the security area. We're told that that will be resolved. And as I said in the last report, focusing on visits, the concerns was contraband storage. As you know, in our previous report, we noted that the contraband that was recovered was not being properly stored. It was being stored in closets. It was being stored on coat racks. That's a concern. So as part of this report, we will be circling back to see if that has been remedied and what are the new policies relating to not only recovering the contraband, proper storage of it, proper receipt of it, and documentation as to what actually was recovered. Because obviously, if you recover contraband, the chance of it being reintroduced, it's not handled properly. So again, I look forward to everyone seeing our next report, as I said, which should be out by 7th. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Eric Bates, and we'll leave it to Scott Sanders to.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Sanders. I am, in week 2 of being the new bureau chief for SYTF, which will be a new bureau, kind of building and rebuilding on things. So to kind of recap what Kevin spoke on with the efforts as it relates to contraband. So we've had help also. So maybe one of the things that led to the reduction is we've got other people. SEO, our Special Enforcement Unit, is actually searching units along with us. So they've been there in the facilities. I'm not sure how many months, maybe a couple of months, but I'm sure that that's leading to the reduction of contraband. And on top of that, one of the things that looking at moving forward is retraining, and Kevin alluded to this, retraining our staff. Our staff need to know how to search and what to search for, and when things don't look right, to go and do something about it. So looking at, I had a discussion this morning with some of the people I want to pull to do those searching and retraining of our staff. So there's a search. So we'll be working with STO, pull that cert to retrain our own staff. We can do that in-house because Kevin is right. Staffing is an issue, and sending people out might not be the answer. It might be sending the training to the units. If there is some downtime when kids are in school, you might be able to pull 2 or 3 right now to kind of teach how to search. So just kind of going back to basics and doing the that have to be done is key to what we're doing. As far as, and this will be something that we'll follow up, I'm sure this question will come up in further meetings, but looking at the creation of a unit that's going to specialize in providing treatment to those youth who have substance abuse issues. There was a discussion this morning that I had with one of the districts about providing looking at where the monies are to allocate for those, and looking at if we already have some contracts that we can expand those contracts to bring more people in to do those things. So the vision is to have a unit. I won't give you a number of kids, but we'll say arbitrarily maybe 10 youth. And everyone in that unit's concentration will be around substance abuse treatment, skilled people whose job it is to do that. I don't want to throw out any providers' names, but there's some that we already have in facilities. And I've had a discussion with DMH, with Karen Strike and Dr. DeMerla also, to look at how we stand those up in buildings alongside with our staff, alongside with some CBOs who will come in to do those trainings. So it's a constant thing. And looking at if we get the numbers of providers to do that, that will translate not just to SYTF, because we're all one department. So where we can spread that to DSB and to RTSB where appropriate, that's what the goal is right now. 2, one of the things I just looked at is some of the things that Kevin is saying, some of the things that Eric has said, looking at contraband and where it's coming from and how it's coming over. Some of the things, we talked about this a while ago, and we know that contraband also kind of comes over the wall. Things happen. So looking at, do we have some security that just kind of maintains that perimeter to look at where things are coming in to keep it from getting to our youth?
I'm going to ask Dr. Sarah Gongora from the Probation Oversight Commission staff team to join. Before we do that, I'll say that Dr. Gongora has taken a new position with the Probation Oversight Commission as the project director for programs and services, a position for which she is highly qualified based on her experience educationally in psychology and other fields, but perhaps most importantly in the field in providing services, direct services, and then doing a lot of interagency work between DMH, where she worked before, and DCFS, but also working directly at both Los Padrinos and Decarceration Center. So we are, when we first started talking about this issue, a number of the commissioners brought up what was, I thought, a brilliant point, which is that, of course, we're concerned about contraband, and also we should be looking at the root causes of why young people are engaging in substance use to begin with. And many of the commissioners have talked about this at length. And so we were excited to take that on as a challenge to see how we could do that. And Dr. Gongora is going to talk a little bit about her thoughts about how the Probation Oversight Commission can support the department in successful implementation of those programs.
Good afternoon, Commission. I think for a long time, the POC has been taken a lot of interest in the programs and services being delivered within the detention facilities. And I think especially with the attention to substance abuse prevention programs that we know through research is affecting the majority of youth detention, right? So some of you probably remember that a few months back, we hosted a meeting where we discussed the full scope of catalog of services that are being provided. We heard from those community providers actually doing the work. And since we had that meeting, our executive director and I have been discussing what our reasonable next steps as a commission should be to not just learn about it, but like do something with it. So in response to that, this summer, we are planning to launch an effort to fully catalog the full scope of substance abuse programming that's taking place. And I think if you do take a look at that attachment that our chair mentioned from DYD, they really got us started in that direction of thinking about everything that's in place. And then what we want to do is start attending those programs and bring back some qualitative assessment to this commission. So I want to get beyond some jargon and explain what do I really mean by qualitative assessment, right? So I think as much as we're interested in how many youth choose to attend a service and how many times things are scheduled, we really need to start gaining an understanding of, like, I don't know, how are youth really engaged into the services, right? Do they feel like the services are relevant to what they need? Are services being delivered with a level of cultural humility? So really thinking about how youth are perceiving their own benefits from being in these programs. So I think that the first step is that the commission needs to have the baseline understanding of what's being provided so that we can identify gaps. But again, getting beyond that, we need to know what's working and not working in those programs so that we can actually make some data-based recommendations to the department as needed for moving forward.
So much.
If I could just ask, Bureau Chief Woods, I believe that we attached to the agenda the new clear bag policy. I'm looking at to Janae to make sure of that. So that's at least one specific policy that's changed since the last time we talked about this. Can you talk a little bit about that, and if there are any other policies that are that the department has implemented in the last few months that have that you might be interested in sharing?
Yes, one of the major policies that we implemented over the last few months that came before the clear bag policy was we restricted all deliveries to our facilities, food deliveries and such to our facilities in an attempt to slow down any possible contraband coming into our facilities via food delivery or what we would say quasi-food delivery services, from members of our community delivering in drugs and other paraphernalia and contraband into the facilities under the guise of being food delivery agents. So that was one of the first things that we done, one of the first policies that I should say that we implemented prior to our clear bag. Subsequent to that policy, we implemented the clear bag policy where we required all of our employees and partner agency personnel coming into our facilities to actually utilize a clear bag for all of their belongings that are being brought into the facility. And we also attempted to reiterate to all of our partner agency personnel that the visitors and partner agency personnel guidelines be followed, which helped to decrease any potential contraband coming in. That is definitely an ongoing effort because That messaging, I don't know if it's been inadequate on our part to our partner agency personnel and any visitors. However, we still have some struggles as it relates to personnel, even our own personnel on occasion, bringing in items or attempting to bring in items without prior approval. But with the clear bags and the assistance of both SEO and AB 109 co-located, it has definitely decreased the number of contraband items that have come into the facility. And we only know that because of all the items that have been restricted. When people come in with the clear bags or whatever, or through the metal wanding or the X-ray detector, they've discovered, certain things. And if it was an employee, instructed them to return it to their vehicle before entering the facility. Any other partner agency personnel, same process, return it to your vehicle before entering the facility. So there have been a significant number. It has decreased over the last several weeks, but we still have some attempts to bring in items as a result. In addition to both the prohibition on food deliveries and the clear bag policy, we've also implemented increased security screening at our front entrances prior to entering into the facilities. Definitely Monday through Friday, not on the weekends, but Monday through Friday over at Central Juvenile Hall, we have AB 109 co-located that does a pre-screen of every individual's employees and visitors and partner agency personnel coming into the facility prior to them getting to the security X-ray screening area, which is manned by contracted security personnel. Over at Barry J. Nardoff Juvenile Hall, we utilize our SEO unit, who does the front entrance pre-screening of all visitors, employees, and partner agency personnel coming in before they get to the security contracted security screening areas. All right, both processes, Monday through Friday, have significantly cut down on, again, contraband and items coming into the facility that we've prohibited and have been prohibited via our handbooks and guidelines. It's in many cases, some of those policies were not strictly enforced. So those continued, and they, of course, became problematic to the point where we had to institute these particular measures. But overall, those particular measures have been effective. I think as we streamline some of those measures, I think we will see even greater results. We've done some things also, such as we've limited electronic devices coming into our facilities. However, that in some ways it created a firestorm, one we're still working through. The firestorm was created, it actually more impacted our security personnel, specifically our AB 109 and SEO units, because what happened is we had some of our partner agencies such as DMH and LACO, as well as Juvenile Court Health Services, who were utilizing a lot of their devices to actually communicate things via their county system. We are still working with them to work out a means of still having viable communication without bringing in cell phones and other electronic devices into the facility, which have in many ways facilitated some of the transactions that went on involving potential or attempted drug drops and things like that. Some of those devices were being utilized as hotspots for our youth in our facilities to communicate with individuals out in the community to bring drugs or attempt to bring drugs into the facility, either by going through the front entrance during visiting or attempting to throw those items over our perimeter wall. So that was one of the motives behind slowing down the electronic devices, as well as some of the picture taking and things like that that went on. Like I said, we're still actively working to work out some resolutions with our partner agencies such as LACO. A lot of their teaching content is on their county-issued computers. However, we're trying to work with them to see if additional county computers can be allocated to them, and if not, is there a definite need for them to take those computers out of the facility? There has been a policy that has been drafted that is in the hands of county council that actually is a merging of the policies by the LA Sheriff's Department as well as the California Department of Corrections. The policy was merged in the effort to provide a streamlined process, more or less, that would allow those individuals that had a need to bring in a electronic device for either videotaping purposes, for investigations and things like that. All those things were outlined, or the need for communications, let's say, with a bureau chief that was in our, or a bureau chief or assistant chief that's in our facility, or a psychiatrist or a physician that's in our facility that might be on call. The psychiatrist or physician not being assigned to our facility, but visiting the facility to provide any type of medical assistance in the facility or examinations, but at the same time being on call to other facilities. So of course, as opposed to having a landline, they would have their a smart device with them. So but we've made allocations, and we're trying to figure out workarounds. But even in the new policy that has been drafted, there is a definite workaround for, you know, the psychiatrists, medical personnel such as doctors, not nurses, doctors, OIG and other entities that, you know, even in the sheriff's department, they are allowed to bring in electronic devices to, you know, effectuate whatever role they're playing, whether it is providing a medical service or doing a particular investigation. So we're just awaiting county council's approval of that. And I think all of those measures, both the restriction to the delivery services, the clear bag policies, the increased security screening at our entrances. Also, we've implemented some perimeter security screening. It is not a consistent practice, again, due to staffing. It's not a consistent practice, and even when we have staffing at times, a lot of it being medically limited staffing, we do utilize them to actually provide some of that perimeter security. They're basically observing the perimeter, actually looking for any type of contraband or what could be perceived as contraband. And we've had many successes with that. You know, just recently, there was some contraband discovered outside of Central Juvenile Hall. So that has had its successes, but I don't want anyone to leave here thinking that that is something that is consistently done or that we're making any type of consistent discoveries. But those are the major policies and procedures that we've put in place to try to limit the contraband, drugs, and other items coming into our facilities.
Thank you so much for those additional comments. We're going to move on to public comment. I'd like to start with the public participants in the room, if we could. So if you guys could approach the podium to my left, that'd be great. And then if you are joining us online, please raise your hand so that you're in the queue.
Yes, so thank you. Those of you, I'm just going to reiterate, please click on the raise your hand button if you're on WebEx, and dial *3 on your phone if you want to make comment. And I'm sorry that we don't have a clock, and we're not showing the clock up on the screen, right? Oh, okay. Do you want me to just set a timer? Right. Okay, Mr. Mendoza, you may.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Kent with ARC. Just here to quickly, how much time I have? 2 minutes or 1 minute?
2 minutes.
Okay, quickly. So I'm gonna be honest. I like to be honest. I have nothing to lose. When I was in Central Juvenile Hall, I got caught with 2 MP3s, 2 lighters, and a bunch of weed. And I remember how I got that in, right? But the point I'm trying to get to, the reason I got all that in there is because I was bored in my cell every single night. I was so stressed out. There was nothing for me to do. So what did I do every night? Smoke and listen to music. Someone snitched me out and I got caught, and I remember the staff writing me up. They demonized me. They said I was involved with cartels. I don't know what the heck they were saying. You can find that in the records. On records, you could probably see it in probation. And I got kicked out and then was sent to PQ in the box, and then from there I got kicked out and went to county jail. That's after beating my case in the compound. With that being said, when I was in camp, I remember when I used to rush my enemies at that time, staff used to come up to me and be like, don't rush him. I don't want to do paperwork on mischief. Do it in the next year. I'll bring you a lighter if you don't rush him. This is what we're dealing with. This is the culture that we're talking about. I think that all I heard right now was the young people, how we're going to search them and all that. But I think it's also staff. It's also employees. It's also faculty members. It's also school teachers, everybody. I think at this point, if we really want to avoid the death of another person, we really need to take this shit serious. We need to put metal detectors, x-rays, even the dogs. I just came from Atlanta with 30 other young people. Went to visit the Legacy Museum to learn about our history of slavery. And the 30 young people, all of us went to the airport, and we all had to go through metal detectors, and we had to walk in an aisle where there was a dog right there. It was not a dehumanizing process. It was a safety process to ensure that nobody's taking nothing into that airplane, right? So what I'm trying to get to, this needs to be taken serious at this point. There's no more, even the policies, I think is very short-handed. There's not, I don't know that policy, does that apply to the teachers, the volunteers, everybody? So I really think that, I feel we really need to take this shit serious, because if not, people are gonna, another person will end up overdosing, and he might not be the same as he might end up dead. So I think that we need to do more for these young people. I mean, a lot of them are doing drugs because there's literally nothing to do in the compound. There's nothing to do. It's so depressing and boring, and the most dehumanizing time that I've ever experienced in my whole lifetime. And I've been in the county jail in Mainline. That's just worse over there. It was the compound. Even the compound was worse than county jail in Mainline. That's how dehumanizing it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kent.
Julio, ARC advocate. I want to start off saying I went through the juvenile system as well, but I can only say that, going through the juvenile system and now transferring to the adult side, and now coming back and listening to juveniles overdose. I mean, that was back when I was in juvenile. I mean, I never had to go through any of that and never had to see any of that, but I can't just say that it has to do a lot with our surroundings and people that are there. When we're there, I mean, we're dealing with a lot of trauma, a lot of things go through our minds, and we can't really work with ourselves when people are triggering us, and when they bring back, oh, I know this person, like, hey, you know that, like, I used to have staff members like be like, hey, I know your homie, I know this, I know, and that would kind of like get me back into the, oh yeah, all right, cool, so, and just having to go through that, I mean, it's just sad for me to hear the dude going through that, and I feel like maybe we should maybe start taking it serious, and maybe providing, like, with all this technology now that we have, I mean, cameras, I think would be a good solution, maybe with staff members, teachers, whatever the case may be, etc. I mean, we need to start working with the youth and the brothers, the younger brothers and sisters, and that's all I have to say for now. Thank you for leaving.
Thank you for being.
One more young lady.
Good afternoon. I'm a council board member on the school site council at Barry J. Niddorf. And this is just my comments as far as the contraband. The compound unit where a young man who had lost his life is secured in the middle of the facility, making it impossible to throw anything over the wall. Constant lockdown, making it impossible for a kid to retrieve any contraband. My son asking me for $10 to $20 because probation officers are selling chips. $10 for a single bag of chips from officers causes many questions and concerns. Me having to deny my son money for food is heartbreaking, not wanting to break rules to sabotage his well-being without proper insight, and parents not allowed to providing them with any type of support. The proposal of parents of bringing fentanyl to kill their own child is a sad analogy of someone unwilling to hold any type of accountability.
Thank you for being here, and I know she's going to do this anyway, but will you please connect with Belinda Mellado, today, who's our Community Services Coordinator. She'll tell you what she wants to talk to you about. Any more public comments in the audience? Okay, so we'll go to WebEx. No hands raised on WebEx. If you're having any trouble raising your hand on WebEx, will you please send Janae a chat? Surprised, but we think none, huh? If you're on the phone, you dial *3.
That was
Okay.
pretty shocking, but we will definitely circle back before.
Yeah, let us know if anybody else raises their hands. Thank you.
Yeah, commissioners, do you guys, I think before, I'd like to ask a question. We started with this sort of high point of a decline in the introduction of these pills or, items in the facilities, and then sort of ended at a very low point of hospitalizations, right? The midpoint is the questionable supervision. That's the point of failure. Notwithstanding the pending investigation, right? Because that's something that's an ongoing barrier for us always. Can you say more about the questionable supervision as it relates to the most recent events?
I think questionable supervision is something that we do see in our facilities. And it is something that we are taking action when questionable supervision is observed. How consistent that action is I can't sit here and say that is done 100% of the time, for the mere fact that shortages, not just on the line staff level, shortages also exist at the supervisory level. We have individuals that actually do video reviews. I neglected to say actually that videos, most of our units in our facility, but that wasn't, the videos aren't anything new. However, we do have canine detection dogs. They weren't new either. However, we do have increased canine searches. But getting back to potential for staff negligence and supervision, that is a definite factor in many of the incidents that we see in our facility, and something that we are definitely actively working on, not addressing, but trying to eradicate some of those, some of the practices, supervision practices or poor supervision practices. And many times the result of staffing, but not always as a result of staffing. Right? Sometimes it may be a result of fear. However, as peace officers, expect them to overcome fear. Reality is, fear is a human condition, and it will actually preclude you from acting in situations where you should act, and you know that you should. And that those some of the same things that you know, contraband, potentially drugs, brought into our facilities by some of our own staff. Those actions, of course, questionable. We're getting down to exact causes why. They're various. Some of the causes could potentially be fear, but there are other nefarious motives that are also involved in such unfortunate transactions that have been discovered within our facilities. We are actively working to root these various activities engaged in by our staff and others out of our facilities. But make no mistake about it, it is not going to be an overnight process, right? Because as you know, we are guided by employment contracts, other, I won't say restrictions, because their restrictions are limited. And other approaches that I myself might utilize may not be acceptable county employment. However, we are, again, working vigilantly, attempting to eradicate a lot of issues with supervision. But that again, I'm not going to have any of you come into our facility, or next time you hear about an incident, that these poor supervision practices will have been eradicated. Have to be eradicated one by one. However, we're going to have to utilize vigilant efforts on the part of not only me at the bureau chief level, everybody under me, directors, supervisors, and line staff. Dedicated and motivated to ensure that supervision of our youth safety is of utmost importance. Yes, we've seen instances where it didn't appear that safety and well-being of our youth was of utmost importance in those rare situations where we have seen poor supervision that has led to some very bad results.
Thank you. I hear you on the staffing shortage piece. We're fully aware of that as a condition, and I'll agree that it's the blow to the dead horse that we're all pretty tired of because we know the shortages exist. I don't like to speculate because, I'm an evidence-based person. I believe in practice. I think it's important to base any decision off of things that are concrete. But when I don't get the information that I'm requesting to be able to make an assessment of an issue, I do have to entertain some speculation. And so when I'm referring to the incidents that happened over the weekend, it was speculated that SCO was present. So despite having staffing shortages, it was also said that a lot of these substances got in during the graduation ceremony that took place where no one was searched. And so there may be limits to what you can share. You'll probably exercise some restraint in a public setting like this, but I believe that there are multiple points of failure. And if we're sort of resorting to this thing about shortages, SEO was present to assist, to search. And as far as I know, none of that has been done or had been done. And that is what resulted in part in the hospitalizations. Does anyone want to speak to that, or we can go on to Commissioner?
I will speak to it briefly, and so you're right, the whole matter is under investigation. And just looking at, I think you hit the nail on the head. So we are aware of that. Kevin is aware of that. Just getting back, I'm abundantly aware of it. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that the retraining of our staff, and we'll never make an excuse, so I will never come to this commission to make an excuse. But I do know, because I've done that job too, retraining and just getting back to basics, the basic things have to happen again. Do the basic things like this don't system failure. I will say that, looking to, because it is important to us. So I don't want, again, like Kevin said, I don't want you to go away thinking that it's not. Getting down to reasons why, there's several reasons. So when you try to solve a problem, you have to look at, okay, what are the most. And again, so I won't mention stacking. I said I wasn't gonna say it, but I just did. But I won't, I'll put it like this. I won't say it again because we've already said something. It's already there. We know that. I've always been the glass half full guy. And I know that these are some issues, so we know where the problems are right now. But the question is, how do we get from here? That's where my focus is. How do we get from here to here? And looking at the say staffing issue, I just did it. It's the one thing, because that leads to a lot of other things. So we have to fix that first. That's number one on my agenda. Number two, or maybe 2A, I mean 1A, I'm not sure, is the substance abuse issue that's happening. And Kent is right. I understand when you're bored, when boredom happens, other things happen. I don't mind, right? So you know the rest of that phrase, and I don't mind. So we know we have to work on something. These are key for us and the team that I will be building, the Kevin's team that we will be building. is knowing, because I don't want to do a history lesson. Kevin and I were promoted to senior almost around the same time in the early 90s. So we know what it is to supervision, and how that the effect of poor supervision is part of this. So we're actively looking at how does that change. I mentioned earlier today that the discussion I had with a couple of people is circle back with STO, get certs that talk about basic supervision. Let's start there. Let's start there, because you have to have the foundation. If you don't have the foundation, nothing else. No, and this is not just hyperbole, I really do this, that you have to build that foundation so you have safety. So if you have safety, everybody's safe, then Don can to his if I'm so busy keeping Sam in his chair to do things, Don doesn't get his program. So I do understand that these things happen. This is where our focus is. I can't speak to a lot of the why. We already know what the problems are. Somebody who's come to me in the last 2 weeks says, "Oh, Mr. Sanders, this is a problem." Okay, I know the solutions. Keep talking about the same thing over and over. So I'm trying to go forward. So you will see. I don't mean in by and by. I'm talking about immediate. Some immediate things that happen. That's my commitment to the department, to the kids, because at the end of the day, if we don't keep the kids in the middle, if the kids aren't center of everything we do, then this is all.
I definitely agree with that, and I hate to say it, but after all the remarks that we've heard from probation, I don't feel like the youth are safer today, and there's obviously really concerned about that.
Before we go, can I just say, if we could make a concerted effort to speak directly into the microphone so that the virtual folks joining us virtually can hear.
Commissioner, sorry to soak up so much of this. Commissioner Lewis, I saw your hand first.
I have a question and a suggestion. Live in a pretty rich county, there's plenty of money. How about, Kent spoke to this, we landed in Atlanta. There are airport x-ray machines you have to walk through. How about we put one of those up front, and everyone that has access to the unit has to walk through. Staff, volunteers, contractors, visitors. Number two, dogs. Dogs that are specifically dedicated to each facility. They don't leave. Whenever someone enters, they have to walk through these two places. They have to walk past dogs, and they have to walk through a airport metal or screener. Not a metal detector where I can stuff something down my pants and walk through, but something that literally scans you when you walk through. So if you can see a dollar bill in my pocket. Because if I'm bringing a clobber of pills and I just stuff it down my pants, you're not going to see it in the metal detector. And if you don't have a dog, you're just not going to see it. It's going to get in, whether it's staff, visitors, whoever it is. If we set those two up, and by the way, in London, you have to go through those and you get patted down. So you know, if we have those two mechanisms, and I'm being specific to the same type of screener that's used at the airport. I'm not saying metal, I mean a screener where you hold your hands up, you take your shoes off, and anything you have in your pocket, including a penny, put it in your pocket. I think the value of the life, Brian, is worth that, so none of our other kids die. I think it would eliminate probably 99% of drugs coming in, except for whatever may come over the walls, because if everyone who has access to this facility has to go by both dogs and that particular type of screen, first, you wouldn't risk it. Second, if you did, you get caught. There's no way around it. Kent spoke to it earlier. When we walked by, the dog spotted too when we were standing in line, spotted on somebody. They had to escort that person out of the line. So dogs are trained. And the most thing, they just had it was a news story that was on this morning. I caught the end of it, where dogs had just made a big bust on fentanyl. So they have dogs that are trained for this. You should pay for dogs to be up front and that metal detector or that screener to be up front at both facilities. I think that's the best investment. We give probation the tools that they need, and we protect our youth by doing so.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Does someone want to speak to that? Looks like Eric Bates, please.
Yes. To Commissioner Lewis's point, during our, and it'll be in our report coming up next month, but in our video review at Central, we have seen that there are clear bags. So to Mr. Woods, we did notice that they are requiring clear bags to be brought in. But the troubling part is staff coming into the metal detectors, but putting their lunch on top of the x-ray machine. They walk through the metal detector, take their lunch. So the lunch never gets screened. So literally those styrofoam packages could be filled with contraband, and it happens continuously. So I agree with you that we should have the most secure equipment that we can, and I think that's a good idea. But until that point, utilizing what the department has now to its best ability would help. And that's a continual problem that I've seen by reviewing them. It's not just a once or twice. It's continuously happening where staff are bonded for metal, but who knows what's coming through packages. So I wanted to just let the commission know.
Next Commissioner, Commissioner Meredith.
First of all, I want to start off with a positive. Last month, Bureau Chief Darlene, her last name, Panicchio, provided Narcan training to the reserve officers. So you've got about 35 extra bodies that will come out and do perimeter security or visitor security on Narcan training. That was pretty good that she donated her time. As we know, our failures include the perimeter security, it's getting tossed over, the drones that happen to come by sometimes, but our high risk are the visitors, staff, and CBOs. And in training in drug interdiction and contraband interdiction, Chief Fletcher was offered the opportunity to have an instructor come in. Apparently that did not happen, but we need to make sure our people know what to look for. On the other side of the coin, we probably need to take and give responsibility to or create a team of people who are trained investigators to surveil, investigate, seize the evidence, and make arrests and prosecute cases. And I say make arrests because if a staff member brings it in, they need to be walked out in front of the rest of the staff in handcuffs. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's one way you're going to convey that message, whether it be a staff member, a visitor, a CBO. It's got to be a conveyed message on that. And I got to recognize and commend Kent and Sam both. Their idea is 100% right on target. Need to prevent equipment's available out. The last thing I'll say is, Bureau Chief Woods, Chief Sanders, I have great faith in you. I know you both, and you know I will hold you accountable. One thing that does get me is when people say, well, they didn't act out of fear, they didn't supervise out of fear. That doesn't work. I come from the world of law enforcement. I have truly seen fear, okay? It's my job to control that fear, manage my people, set that tone, and be held to expectations. If I fail, I need to be removed from the position. That's all I have.
So before we move on, I do want to know, because I know that you've been in the position for just a little bit and maybe tenure in this particular position, but why, after all that we've learned about what contraband does and where it leads us, are staff members able to not be thoroughly screened? Is there monitoring surveillance to be able to say, this went wrong this week, we need to correct it? Is that kind of internal oversight not happening? Who can answer that question? Because OIG, and actually Eric Bates, is that going to come up in your report? That finding about the
Sorry, what specifically?
Well, I'm wondering how we would learn about that otherwise. Is that sort of finding going to be in the July 7th report about the surveillance of the staff members and the lunch bag?
That will. And again, I do think it's extremely important to. It seems like it's something that can be done, and I would like to think that with the tragic death of the youth, that things would have been done even to the extreme exaggeration to make sure that this doesn't happen. And unfortunately, at least at Central, that does not appear to happen. At Barry J, I will say that the SEOs have done a very good job in dealing with contraband and the entry of this entryway and searching and whatnot. I don't know if that's the case though at Central, and I hope that they would also be Central as well. My discussions with the department is that that is likely to happen, but video that I've seen as recently as last Thursday, I would not be shocked if contraband, there's just that lack of screening at the time.
Well, knowing, having the contraband report and knowing that we have a lot more activity at Barry J, I am somewhat relieved to know that security agent there. Other commissioners? Commissioner Kakani?
I know you shared that about 42% of the staff at Barry J are trained in the use of Narcan. Is that 42% of staff also carrying Narcan?
That 42% of staff is not all carrying Narcan. There are measures in place right now as we speak, make sure they all have Narcan. All staff were supposed to have Narcan. It didn't happen. It happened at Central. It didn't happen at Barry J.
Why?
Lack of follow through. Our management side.
Sometimes I'm really just left with a lack of words.
Excuse me?
I said sometimes I'm just left with like a lack of words. And I don't mean for this to fall right on you, but
No, I don't mind. I mean, it should fall, this should fall on me. I have no problem with it falling on me. It's my job to make sure that it doesn't happen in the future. Just like Mr. Bates just brought up, a situation with the pills and possibly other items being placed on top of the x-ray machine, which doesn't make absolutely any sense to me, but it's obvious that I need to ensure all my executive managers that work in the facilities will ensure that the OD, officer of the day, that is supposed to be positioned in the lobby area where staff are coming into the facility are giving instructions or redirecting security personnel relative to allowing people to put items on top of the x-ray machine as opposed to through x-ray machine. So hearing that it's great information. It's just as shocking to me as it is to you because it seems like it would be common sense. Why would you have an x-ray machine and let other items come through? But there is supposed to be an OD, officer of the day, a supervisory level personnel positioned in the lobby, 5:45 a.m., 1:45 p.m., and also at 9:45, and they're supposed to remain there for a period of 30 minutes. And they were placed there to, first of all, check people in and to ensure that any resistance that was given to security personnel, that those staff and our partner agency personnel or visitors, okay, were corrected relative to informing them of what our security procedures are and our expectation that everybody follow them. But it appears that some of those things weren't happening. If we're allowing packages, that's all I can call them, we don't know if they were food or not, are being placed on top of the x-ray machine out of the area, actual x-ray. So, you know, some things are, I'm not going to try to explain them. It doesn't make sense whatsoever. So, but I will take action today, and I'm pretty sure this will be implemented tomorrow, and I look forward to hearing results of any observations that occur that, you know, reveal otherwise.
so, you know, oftentimes we'll hear probation staff, even in this room, talk about how there are no consequences for young people, right? It's a common refrain that we've heard from probation staff. I guess I'm curious, what is the consequence for probation staff when you hear information like this? You know, are you going to go and review the footage? Do you have staff who's going to review the footage that Mr. Bates is referencing to figure out who's on staff, to figure out, you know, whether that officer of the day was there for 30 minutes and everything was going just fine because people felt like someone was watching, but what happens after that 30 minutes? What happens from 6:15 to 1:45 or whenever the next shift is for the officer of the day to observe what's happening in the lobby? So yeah, like what are the consequences outside from issuing kind of a memo or a reprimand or a warning? 5 hospitalizations feels like something that we should be, I don't know, responding with a little more.
I think we're beyond the point of memos. Other people may have different about that. I don't think at this point, everyone having an acute awareness of our contraband issues, I think a memo is going to be very helpful at this point. If there are such activities going on that they're intentional, and a memo is not going to deter such behavior, I think more stringent action have to occur to anyone that continues to want to intentionally violate our policies, not just with the X-ray machine, but in other areas as well. I just don't think approaches that we have utilized on a large scale, they will work in ideal situations. We're not in an ideal time. We're in a time of crisis. We have to take a different approach. I've heard management personnel talk about they feel that get more bees with honey and vinegar. Very well may. But in many ways, in a crisis situation, trying to get bees with honey is almost equivalent to trying to put out a forest fire. Well, in this situation, trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol for fear that the traditional means of putting out a forest fire might damage the trees, not realizing that if you don't put the forest fire out, the forest will be destroyed, and the trees being a part of the forest will be destroyed as well. So that is not going to be my approach. It's never, you know, I've been here for 3.5 months. That's never been my approach, to try to put out forest fires with water pistols. It is one that I'm going to have to be a little bit more vigilant with, and we'll see what the outcome is over time. These, you know, some of the issues, some of the practices that I'm hearing, wasn't that we didn't have any type of processes in place. You know, like I said, you know, there is not only with the OD at the front entrance, but there should have been constant communication with our security personnel so that when the OD is not present, our security personnel know, contractor or not, they know if they are having an issue with, let's say, a staff visitor or otherwise, following our security procedures, that should immediately be brought to the attention of the OD. If the OD is not available, and many of you are familiar with this, you've tried to come into the facility, you couldn't come in, you may have needed to come into the facility with an electronic device, and they had to call the facility superintendent. Well, those security personnel have to know also, call the facility superintendent or managerial lead if someone is not cooperative. And that's at any hours of the day, 24/7. Well, the superintendent may not be there, But I'm sure the facility superintendent would not enjoy getting a phone call of uncooperative behavior in the middle of the night. So I think we do have to employ some other measures to make sure that, yes, our processes are consistent. Our security measures are consistently applied. And when we have individuals that attempt to violate them, that somebody in authority is immediately brought into the loop so that they can redirect and inform, or just blatantly tell the individual, you're not coming into the facility. As simple as that. I mean, I don't know how difficult that is, but it seems to be extremely difficult. It is something that, I definitely want to eradicate. Like I said, the issue with the packages on top of the x-ray machines, that's a little much. So I will take measures after our meeting today to get that eradicated.
Mr. Bates, are you in a position to share the footage that you've reviewed, Mr. Woods, around, like what times or what days or who?
Like, share with him that information?
Not even just that information, but the footage so that it can be identified who was working.
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, I think live footage that show that, but I have no problem. I am looking forward to speaking with Mr. Woods relating to that issue.
Just very quick, if you can provide a date, Mr. Woods, you stated that right now 42% of the staff that has been trained do not carry Narcan. When will they be carrying Narcan by?
They should be carrying Narcan by Monday. I'm anticipating some of those staff that didn't have Narcan in their possession, between the date that I was notified they didn't, and Monday, I think they will have had, the management team at Barry J will have had ample opportunity to ensure all of our active and available staff will have been issued the Narcan.
Okay.
And please keep in mind that the same instructions to issue Narcan to our employees went out to both Central and Barry J. It was basically an instruction and an authorization to issue Narcan to everyone that had been trained in the administration of Narcan. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Just a few more questions. Related to, you stated that there is an issue with staff being trained because of call-outs, and so folks who are scheduled to be trained end up having to cover for those who are calling out. Can you give some sort of like number or percentage of call-outs that are currently Barry J and Central? I don't know if it's like an average daily or
Just thinking of looking at some of the staffing numbers on a daily basis, I get the facility staffing sheets. And looking at those numbers, I would say the call-out rate ranges anywhere from 20 to 25%. Those are not, those are just my projections based upon eyeballing the numbers that are given and me doing a quick calculation in my head.
Thank you. And then my last comment was related to the SEO searches. Every single time I've gone to Barry J, the young folks talk about how incredibly dehumanizing, dysregulating, intrusive, harmful, triggering those searches are, where they're asked to get on the floor, put their hands behind their heads, get on their knees, taken to the bathroom, required to take off all their clothing. And it, while I didn't see something to that extent when we were at Camp Page, young folks were being searched because the staff no longer had her phone charger. And even just in that moment, immediately following that search, which was nowhere near what I think an SEO search looks like, they were so incredibly dysregulated and their school day was shot. There was no way that they were, not that there was any real instruction happening, but even if there was an intention for it to happen, there's absolutely no way those young folks were going to get to a place where they could sit down and take advantage of the remaining 2 hours that they had in the classroom. And so I don't know what it looks like to do something a little more humanizing or like acknowledging like the dignity and humanity of young people. But if that's something that could be looked into, I think wildly helpful, because I don't know that young folks see a difference between SEO staff, probation staff. They're all part of the same system. And it really does, I think, a disservice to whatever the department is trying to do when young folks are left with feeling that these folks are almost like here to terrorize them. That was kind of the tone in which I heard their sharing. So I just wanted to name that piece because it's like the one thing that I heard very regularly talking about young folks, about their days, about how they were doing, about what they needed. It was talking about the searches and just how gross they were.
Thank you, Commissioner Kakani, or Vice Chair Kakani, rather, Commissioner Terry.
I have a question about the DMH or substance abuse services that are in place. How do they measure their effectiveness? Like, what changes for youth as a result of being in these programs? And is that data that we're actively gathering or able to review? Because I also know that there's youth and adults who would never step foot into a traditional substance abuse program. And so also it's like what programs are available for them? Because there's so many CBOs who do that great prevention work, but who are also kind of targeting those protective factors, those areas that are then gonna, encourage a youth to either stop using or not use in the first place. So while we're talking about the security measures, I'm also drawn back to what service, do we have the right services in place, and how do we know? How do we know if they're effective?
So you were speaking to exactly what I was talking about. So some of the discussions one of the discussions I had this morning was surrounding what you just mentioned and talking with DMH, the same type of thing. What's going to be effective? What's going to really get to what that young man or young lady needs to treat whatever addiction that they have. So looking at that, I can't tell you right now how effective it is. I can speculate, but I don't want to do that. So one of the things, those that we're talking about from over the weekend, some of the discussions we've had with them were some of the same thing that Sam said. They're bored, they're this, that, the other. So in working with some of the CBOs and service providers that we're hoping to bring in the near future, we're not talking about this time next year. We're talking about as soon as we can get it, as soon as contractually get those things done, we're going to do that. But we're looking at those kind of things and looking at what we need from because kids will tell you the truth. If you talk to a kid, he'll tell you what he needs. So some of that is what needs to happen first. While we're building the plane, I want to help us build it while we fly it. So that's one of the things we want to do. Years ago, we did a thing, and Don can tell you because he saw it in action. We did a thing called Teen Council where it was almost like a little government thing for every building. You had 2 or 3 kids from each building. They would get together and talk about, what works, what doesn't work. So those are some of the things that we're going to like in the immediacy. So we can find out, and even after we start whatever program we want to do, I think it's important for us to go back, see if it really works, because we might think it's working, right? And so we'll be able to talk about that moving forward, and that's a very, very good question, and that's kind of where we are now. What will really happen?
Other commissioners? Commissioner Carrillo.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Mr. Woods and Sanders, I want to just thank you for your frankness and speaking very clearly. I hope this is a reflection of our new chief. We admire the fact that, just not you're speaking off the cuff, but you're speaking very clearly about your position and direction of the department. I really want to acknowledge Kent Mendoza and the young mother who's in the room and give this. And you mentioned a couple of things, and what I kept hearing in my head was just the culture dynamic, the culture changes that we need. It's something that, it's one of our tasks to look into, all of ours, not just the POC. And what I was remembering from my own time in juvenile hall, kind of going off the cuff a little bit here, but as I heard the mother talk about the money exchange, the black market, I really thought about the grooming that has to happen, that dynamic. Here's an adult with something that wants an exchange from the youth, in this case, money for offering. When I was there, they started off with cakes, little cake that they would come to the door, and it all happened at nighttime. So whether first shift or third shift, I don't remember the shifts, but it happened at night. Then it was burritos, $5 this and $10 for that. Lo and behold, first of all, they had to sort of trust you before they came knocking. But lo and behold, cigarettes, cocaine, and then alcohol. And it wasn't just, the day you arrived. They watched you. They made sure that you were the guy, or someone said, someone might have some money. And I am a little disheartened that I never connected that to an adult taking advantage of youth. I might think about it sexually, but in this case, there's this transaction that can lead ultimately to someone's death. So I think what I want to share from an experience that I had from echoing that's been shared today is to maybe think about it in that magnitude. But this is just not a staff member who's doing some kid a favor, who's hungry. There's an endpoint here that is violating a number of not only policies and things that these individuals signed up to make sure that they didn't break, but they're violating the trust of the youth and vice versa, their own adult sense of who they are. So it's more of a comment. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis.
Chair Jackson. I might be going out of order, but just want to ask if we're not in the process, and when I say we, the county, because as I said previously, long before Brian passed away, everyone that's involved in this process has some accountability to that young man's life. Myself for not screaming loud enough and pushing hard enough. So I'm going back to the dogs and the scanners. If we're not in the process of purchasing these, can we submit a motion to the board? It's money, it's a check, it's getting it installed. It's not rocket science. It's not hard. Like, just had work done on my house. If you pay the money, it happens quick. How difficult is it for us to get these two mechanisms in place? And part of the reason why I'm saying is SYTF, which is a state prison, has this. Substance abuse treatment facility, by the way, has one of the scanners from the airport. If we're not in the process already, what do we need to do to expedite this process to get these tools in place to protect these young people?
So I can actually have a real answer for that question. This morning, one of the discussions we had was surrounding the dogs and how we can increase what is happening. So that's a conversation that's happening now contractually, because we already have a contract. We have a purchase order already. So we're looking at how much that purchase order will get us. Say, hypothetically, if I have a purchase order for $200 and I'm only using how much more will using the rest of that get me? So that's where we are now, looking at what else we can add to that. So it's on the table as we speak right now.
For the dogs, and then.
So that's the next thing. So the dogs, I can answer that question. We're looking scanners. That's another project, but we can.
So how do we support this? Like Mr. said,
I would say that, excuse me, Sam. I would say that we definitely, I would encourage the full support from this commission to bring that before the board so that it can be expedited. Because like you said, there's, when I go to the airport, just as all of us, I mean, everybody doesn't necessarily go through that X-ray scanner. But I have almost every time that I go through the airport. So, and it will definitely contribute to significant decrease any items being brought into our facilities. And as a result, it could potentially save lives. And it is something that to do, immediately, as quick as possible. I'm in full agreement. And I would encourage this commission to bring that before the board and to push to get it expedited. With all your influence that you have.
So make any recommendation that we want to the board. We made this point. It really boils down to what happens on site and how things are implemented, because sometimes you have a machine on site that's not functioning. That was an issue. So let's look at this in a very well-rounded and thorough way for the sake of really understanding what the solutions are and how effective.
No, absolutely. And I think, you said a machine that was on site that wasn't working. I think part of procuring any equipment should also include the procurement of a maintenance contract and inspections and things like that to ensure that such equipment, especially as equipment that can actually prevent injuries, death, things like that, that is something that we definitely need to procure, maintenance, inspections, and everything, and not just from agencies that are utilizing this, but from outside agencies where we can have assurances that the equipment is going to be properly maintained and working 24/7. Yes, Don. Oh,
Yeah, I just want to be clear though. I'm talking,
I'm sorry.
we're talking about maintenance.
Sorry.
I'm going to shoot to you in 1 second, Don. I just wanted to be very clear. We're talking about functionality, we're talking about maintenance, but we're talking about human supervision and how important that thing is fundamentally. I just want to be very clear about that.
You're absolutely right. The human supervision aspect is just as critical, because if we don't have the human supervision, then that X-ray screener would be ineffective as well. They'd allow people to go around as opposed to going through for whatever reason. So that is something that we have to ensure from a management level that it's not going to be tolerated. Simple as that. So maybe others in here have a different solution. Definitely, I've always been willing to hear different sides, different solutions, but I don't, if I go to the airport and I refuse to go to the X-ray machine, I'm not going on my flight. Okay, and if I persist, I'm going to be arrested. And I don't see how in any of our facilities, how we're going to continue to allow people to defy our policies and procedures. I just don't, like I said, I'm open for suggestions on how you do that and create a safe, secure environment. I don't know, and I'm always looking to learn something new and different. If anybody has some different suggestions, please tell me, because then I'm going to go over and talk to airport security as well and ask them, would that possibly work in their situation?
Okay, we're going to revisit public comment in just a second, but I want to leave it to Commissioner Meredith.
The simple solution is we contact CDCR, because I believe one of these facilities already has it, see what the specifications are, what the cost amount is, the maintenance contract, how many it takes to staff it, so then we can present it to the board as a recommendation they should consider, because the CEO is going to have to approve it anyway, but to get the facts on it. So I was going to say, that only cures part of our problem. We still have the perimeter.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia-Leyes.
Thank you. So first, I want to thank you for the report that we got with the details. This is much better than what we've got in the past. I'm really happy we're starting to see data that I find useful. But what it shows, especially at Barry J, is in the last 4 weeks, pretty much everything but pills has gone up. And weapons has gone up quite a bit. Can you give me a sense of whether or not that's because there are more weapons, or is it a function of more searches or finding more, but the actual number has not gone up?
I think it's the latter. There's more searches. So it's effective, because if you're finding stuff, that means people are searching. And so if you never find anything, it leaves the question that you're not searching. So with our own searches and with SEO assisting, they've been finding lots of things. So that I do believe that that's the cause for that.
So you don't think the staff are in any more danger now than they were 2 months ago based on these numbers?
That's kind of let me see how I answer that question. I'm not going to say no, I don't think so. I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is they're finding more things. So maybe they are safer because they're finding.
Well, that was why I wanted to ask the question,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, staff safety is, usually we have staff here to say this, so they're not here, so I'm gonna say it. Staff safety is of paramount importance. The number of weapons that are being found increasing is a great concern, but it could be a good thing, I don't know. I hope we get a handle on that. But I just wanted to make sure before we move on to another agenda item that we pointed out that there was no more than 18 weapons found in a 6-week period past, and then in the last 4-week period, 56 weapons. That's an increase of 7-8-fold. So it also calls into question whether or not things like policies that have been put in place are effective, or when we see pills dropping down, what we have is a reduction in demand, right? The kids are like, damn, I better not take a bunch of fentanyl pills if it will kill me. And the people who are smuggling it in are saying that it's hot, we better like lay off of that. But smuggling in general and contraband in general may be going up. So that's important to consider when we assess the effectiveness of these policies. That's it, thank you.
And we're going to end with Commissioner Mundo before we circle back to public comment.
I'm going to question that. What percentage of the weapons that are found are linked to an individual? And those that are linked to an individual, what happens? What happens with the individual that has the weapon?
So the question, so let me go back to I'll answer it backwards. So what happens to the individual? Depending on what's found, Scott has a weapon that's found on him. What happens to him? We actively are doing reports. We're actively in contact with the courts. In another couple of weeks, it's going to all be SYTF. So some of that is going to change how we report that. But sometimes with the non-dispo, we're in contact with the courts. Court reports, different things. If it's a situation where we need to move that youth because he's in danger everybody else is in danger for him, we'll do that. So there are things, and what that will do is also lead to further searches, right? So if I was found with something today, we might search again. One thing that we do know is that if you go search my room and I'm in school, maybe I've taken something to school. So we will go back and look at the school and the classroom to find it. So it triggers other things, searches. It triggers that, hey, we might need to look at Scott, what's going on? And is he in fear or other things happening? I don't know if I've answered your question.
So you reported to the court, and is that just in a notice of potential violation, or is it in the form of a new charge?
Depending on the weapon and what it was used.
Who makes the determination if it's going one direction or the other?
So in 2 weeks being there, it's been, we have a supervisor who does that, who files. Management team will look at to see what it is and inform that.
When you have a weapon in an institution that, and most of the individuals will know it's there, ones that are trying to maintain a safe residency, it's different than just having a weapon on the streets. There's a trigger of more serious charges. In some cases, a misdemeanor can turn into a felony just because the possession is in the facility. And if I'm a youth who's just trying to survive, and I see that somebody that I may think is dangerous to me was found with a weapon, and he walks back into that institution, into that environment, and I start wondering if I have to arm myself. And so is there a directive or some process that is actually written that really details what occurs at each step?
Well, I don't want to say not necessarily, but it's part of basic supervision. If this happens, if I'm found with this weapon, there has to be, that triggers something else, whether it's a court report, whether it's removing that for a minute to find out what's going on. It's something that triggers a response by staff to do something. It's not okay for Don to have a weapon. I check his room, and there's a weapon, and then we just, hey, Don, let's just go on with life as normal without doing something different. It might even trigger, it should also trigger a DH referral. Let's talk to his therapist so we can find out if there's something else going on with it.
It just seems dangerous not to have something specific, allowing that much discretion to be out there without much to follow.
Point taken.
So much for that. So we are going to spare a few minutes for public comment. We're not going to allow additional members of the public to join the queue, but for those who approach the podium and raise their hand prior to going to commissioner comments, we'd like to invite you to comment now.
Okay, so the two folks who were going to comment in the room, first, you can come up to the podium, and then we have one hand raised on WebEx, which is a phone. You want to make public comment?
Not
No,
yet.
for on this same issue again. We'll have public comment on the next issue as well, general. Okay, go ahead, you can begin.
I'm sorry, and unfortunately, we are going to reduce it to 1 minute this time around. Thank you.
Morning, all. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is ARC, within ARC, and I want to speak on the topic of substance use. A lot of kids don't use drugs because they're bored. Me as a youth, I was addicted to drugs before I was incarcerated, and I was using drugs due to a lack of love, family, and relationships. I went through so much trauma. I used it to escape reality. I know for sure a majority of kids locked up right now are using drugs because of their traumas. A lot of times, like a lot of us youth, like we're all broken. We all have problems. And the thing is that I've seen a lot of like issues within juvenile hall that kid will have a bad attitude. They'll react to a staff, and then a staff would act on their own emotions, and they will punish the kid. The kid would be like, I've had a bad day. This is it. I can't do it. Like, I'm gonna just do drugs, just to escape that reality. And I felt like I would really recommend, like, if we have a stronger support system, which I believe that incredible messengers, I believe that if someone that is there more caring coming from like our circumstance, they would understand us better and have that patience, where I've seen a lot of staff that do not have that patience with us, it gives kids an excuse to fall back on drugs to escape that reality. Just wanted to say that part. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Can you speak into the mic more directly?
Okay,
please?
my name was Tamaje. So when I was in juvenile hall, I was addicted to Xanax and oxycodone. So when I got incarcerated, I didn't have access to that at all. And so my whole question is, how is that accessible today? And if it is more accessible today, why isn't the staff like held more accountable to it? We're treating it like it's an accident, or pretty sure staff's making money off of it. So I know in the streets, if you're making money, drug dealer, why are we not treating staff like they're drug dealers? They're the ones supplying it to kids, which seems way worse than just supplying it in the streets. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for commenting. We're going to move on to online comments.
So your phone number begins with 310. I actually don't remember. You can dial *6 to unmute yourself. A call-in user with your hand raised, if you can dial *6 to unmute yourself. Your phone number starts with 310.
Hello?
Yes, great. You can begin.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Luis. I'm an advocate with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. I'm speaking on item 2. The Anti-Recidivism Coalition is highly concerned with the being of our youth. And I understand that it has been safer to only and automatically blame the parents for the introduction of contraband in the juvenile facilities, but realistically, only large quantities are able to get through security by probation staff, therapists, or any type of free staff. The solution will be to start holding these staff more accountable or going through the same procedures, humiliating procedures that parents are being put through by being excessively searched. And on top of that, there's cameras and everything. It's just the lack of supervision that comes from these staff. Most of them, when I was there at a time years ago, they'll sleep. And if you were caught with any type of contraband, you could pay yourself out of it. So, and at the same time, looking at it from a different perspective, if that was really a problem, it could be stopped. Okay, it can be stopped, but due to that is all being allowed into the facilities is to keep these kids sedated and that way easily more controlled. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Such great perspective. Thank you for that comment. Thank you for all of the additional public comments. I did want to ask really quickly, has there been any cases of staff involved, like drug transactions? Please, if you can comment on that from an investigative perspective, like Scott or Mr. Woods.
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Okay. Thank you all for entertaining those agenda items. We're going to move on to agenda item number 5. We're out of time here, but on this agenda item, we're going to discuss and take any appropriate action on updates on the movement of all pre-adjudication youth from Bay and Central to LP, that's Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, by July 23rd, 2023. We're also going to discuss the implementation of programs and policies at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall to ensure compliance with Titles 15 and 24 standards to protect the well-being of youth and staff in the facilities. So unfortunately, Chief could not be here with us today. And so we're going to have here in his stead Bureau Chief Woods to speak to the issue and to give us some updates and some answers. We'll leave it to you, Mr. Woods.
Right now, we're in the process of transferring our non-dispositional youth from both Barry J. and Central Juvenile Hall. And that process right now is the planning process, putting together a operational and a transportation plan, a detailed operational and transportation plan that will help to ensure safe, effective transit of youth from both facilities to Los Padrinos, and upon their arrival at Los Padrinos, an effective operations plan whereby youth will be provided with programmatic opportunities and activities throughout the day, and also a safe and secure environment. As everyone here knows, we have to have both Barry J. and Central Juvenile Hall vacated of all predispositional youth no later than July 23rd. It is anticipated and planned that we will have all of our predispositional youth at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall by the 18th of July. The movement of youth from both Barry J. and Central will go one facility starting with Central and then proceed to Barry J. The transition will be done in groups or phases, if you like, meaning that one day we will transfer so many youth and proceed to the next until that particular facility, all of our predispositional youth from that facility have been transferred. Transfer dates specifically, I am not privy to disclose. However, like I said, putting together a full transportation and operational plan to ensure safe transit and ensure that the programmatic opportunities and activities are available to youth upon their arrival at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall.
That completes the update.
That is,
Just
That is-
please, if that's it. we can-
questions, comments?
Okay, I actually don't think we had any previous written comment on this agenda item. If you'd like to submit written public comment, please send it to info@poc.lacounty.gov. If you'd like to give public comment on the move to Los Padrinos in the audience here, please stand up and go to the podium. Do we have any hands raised on WebEx? I see some yeses. So I think we will begin the virtual participants. Okay, thank you for your patience. We're going to start with Mary Lou. I believe it's Vache is what I'm guess.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
I just had a quick question on that and how is probation coordinating with LACO to ensure the mandated education is accessible and at point of transfer? That's all part of your operational transportation plan?
Yes, the coordination with LACO is part of our transportation and our operational plans. LACO has been a part of the planning process. They've been had meetings with them on multiple levels. They will continue to be a part of the planning process. They do not have all of the dates, and I know that is problematic at times. However, once the plans are complete, they will have ample time to make an effective transition to ensure that our youth are getting all of the necessary educational services at Los Padrinos as they have at both Central and Barry J. Nardolph Juvenile Hall.
I might actually ask Commissioners Garcia-Leyes or Kakani if they wanted to comment on that as well, just based on the pre-inspection we conducted.
I spent a very good portion of our visit talking to the new principal at, who will be the principal at the juvenile court school at Los Padrinos, and I was very impressed by him. He seems really ahead of the curve as much as he could be, and I'm confident that with the exception of probably having to open with a number of long-term subs, that we're going to see at least the quality of education that people have gotten in the past in the juvenile court schools continue. And I'm optimistic to see some improvements.
Mr. Kakani, do you share Commissioner Garcia's optimism?
I didn't spend as much time with principals, so CLA's assessment. I think the bigger concern is whether or not young folks will actually be able to get to school, which probation has already acknowledged that July 23rd. So that feels like the more immediate question. Not whether LACO will be, but whether young folks can get to school.
Based upon the projected numbers we have currently of staff that will be at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, we do feel very strongly that young people will definitely be able to get to school on a daily basis. And that's based upon the projected numbers that we have currently.
Chair, are we done with public comment?
That was what I was just asking. I believe so. Yes, no more public comment.
Then I'd just like to take the opportunity to respond to that the department on Tuesday filed a statement with the court saying it would be unreasonable to expect them to be able to move youth to class every day when Los Padrinos opens. And I frankly found it shocking that at these meetings, both the chief and now you have come in and said we should be able to expect the minimum standards to be met at Los Padrinos, and yet in court, the county's attorneys are saying that the exact position you just took and that the chief has taken is unreasonable and that the department should not be held accountable to be able to get youth to school every day?
I believe that the information that was provided in court was information that they're anticipating us potentially having some of the issues with medical issues of our staff, but based upon the projected numbers, I don't want to contradict what was said in court, but based upon the projected numbers that we have, it would be possible for us to get youth to school on a daily basis. Now, those projected numbers, all right, do not include individuals who may not come to work or refuse to come to work. Because if that does happen, then yes, it is going to be highly unlikely. Based upon what we have and the individuals that actually requested the transfer to Los Padrinos, we have a very good shot, definitely, of getting them to school every day. However, if some of the other problems that have plagued us in the past persist, yes, it would not be reasonable to do so.
Commissioner Meredith, or, sorry, Commissioner Garcia-Leyes, did that come?
No, I just wanted to bring that to the public's attention. I have some other questions, but I can wait. Commissioner Meredith raised his hands first.
Mine's real quick. In the sense of being a good neighbor, have we reached out to the city of Downey or city officials to let them know we're doing this move so they're aware of it? They may have seen it in the media, but we should probably have some kind of liaison with them.
Yes, the city of Downey and their local police agency have been briefed on the move. They're fully aware that we are making the move.
I will share that yesterday I had the opportunity to attend an event that probation put on for department heads welcoming and opening of Los Padrinos. And in attendance were officials from the city of Downey who were collaborative, supportive. It was clear that there had been significant amount of outreach done, and Supervisor Hahn and the city council representative discussed that collaboration. So it was a very successful, I think, presentation.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I'd gotten some feedback that we hadn't. We do have a bit of a sensitive relationship with the police department.
Garcia-Leyes, did you?
Yeah, so thank you. There were a number of questions that occurred to me after our recent visit that I did not think to ask at the time, and could. The first is, so the construction work that was happening was amazing. I mean, I was really impressed. Round the clock work. Are there inspectors involved in this? Do we have to submit building plans? Are there county inspectors that need to look at that work? I didn't ask anything about that process.
County inspectors do actually look at the work. You know, with ISD, they're always communicating with county personnel regarding inspections and things like that. In addition, BSCC comes out and inspects the facility to make sure that it meets, state institutional requirements. So there are multiple inspections that the facility had to go through to be able to open and accept youth.
You know if there were any like architectural plans, that whole process? I'm just trying to understand how we were able to get this done so quickly when other things have taken so long.
I'm almost certain there were architectural plans involved. I didn't see them, and I can read architectural plans. I didn't see them, but I'm almost certain. I remember there were several architects working on the project. I remember his last name by the name of James. He was definitely working on the project. So architects were involved. And they would have to be actually to draw up a lot of wiring designs and things like that that had to be incorporated. A lot of the new meter wiring and things had to be incorporated to the building. Take the expertise of an architect to do.
Thank you. So that makes it just doubly impressive. You mentioned the BSCC inspection. I know that was supposed to come after us, that I believe Lisa Southwell was going to come through and do the Title 24 inspection. Has that happened yet? Is that happening this week? Do you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a BSCC inspection to date. And there most likely be a follow-up inspection sometime next week. Final inspection to give for us to actually go ahead and proceed with the moving.
That's great. Okay, so at our last meeting, we passed a motion asking for a plan. We intentionally didn't give a deadline because we knew things were in motion. You mentioned that you guys are developing a plan.
Yes.
Do you know when we might expect to see that? Is it going to be a written plan?
It is going to be a written, a definite written transportation plan. And
Sorry, the transportation plan, I understand, has been sensitive, and we
Yeah,
didn't
it's
necessarily
very-
ask
yeah,
for
it's
that.
very
So
sensitive,
the
yeah.
operational
And-
plan for once it opens.
And we are going to develop a operational plan as well to ensure that receiving services and things like upon arrival in that facility, yes.
Okay, so after we asked for that plan, I just was like, how do you open a new facility without a written plan? It seems crazy that can't be legal. So I actually did go back and carefully read through Title 15 and Title 24, and both of them require extensive written plans in order to be in compliance. And I know we've heard again and again that the department is planning to be in compliance before the young people there, so we don't start having to submit a corrective action plan a month after we open a new facility. So that means written plans need to be provided to the BSCC, both to satisfy Title 15 and to satisfy Title 24. So are we going to expect those plans before the movement starts?
I would suspect that those plans have Ms. Cotton being over the entire transition and being in constant communication with BSCC and their inspections. I'm pretty sure a lot of those plans have been developed, or else I don't see the BSCC giving us approval to move.
Okay, so you and I see this eye to eye on that then.
What?
I said you and I see eye to eye on that then.
Yes.
Then I would hope the department will start sharing these plans, even partial plans that are complete, rather than wait till the whole plan is done, with our executive director and with the commissioners, and asking for them for now. And yeah, if Ms. Cotton has some to share, I would like to see those shared sooner rather than later. And definitely by the time or at the same time as they're getting the CC. That's all. Thank you.
I'm actually glad that you asked that. That was similar to the question that I had. It feels like as an oversight body, we're always more often than not, we're the last to. And we could just be so much more helpful. We're involved in like the planning process. We're happy to give feedback about things. And I think a lot of, the failures that go along with a move, failures that were associated with the previous move, they could have been prevented if we were more involved in the process. So we do look forward to maybe getting details about that plan sooner than later, maybe. Commissioners, Commissioner Kakani.
So when we were at LP last week, we asked about staffing. And I think that was last Tuesday or last Thursday. We were informed that there was some sort of fair wherein probation was trying to recruit folks and determine how many people would be interested, willing to move over to LP. So I guess what is the desired number of staff to meet the need of the projected population? And where are you with that number of desired staff? Are you all the way there? Any details around staffing would be greatly appreciated. Given that it's-
Okay, I'm going to give you a number right now. There's 622 staff that will be transitioning over to Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, right? However, 50% of them have medical restrictions. So that leaves us with a total of approximately 312. 175 transitioning to Barry J. And right now, approximately 25% of them have some type of medical restriction. So right now, at Los Padrinos, that's why I was saying before, with school numbers at 312, it is not the ideal number when you talk about placement numbers for things like vacations, holidays, call-outs, and things like that. However, in looking beyond them, those numbers can, satisfy a lot of the minimum numbers that we would need to get youth to school. However, have the significant call-out problem that we have now, then yes, it will definitely impede our ability to get them to school. We're hoping to, start transitioning our employee culture, right, where people are more enthusiastic about coming to work, doing job like never before, feeling safe. And we think, sometimes the safety, a perception of working in an unsafe environment has contributed. How much has contributed, I couldn't tell you, but we believe it has contributed. And I think, and also distance and travel for a lot of the staff, we think that has contributed as well. So we think that, because these individuals were allowed to bid to Los Padrinos, had a desire to transfer to Los Padrinos, we think we're going to see greater numbers in relation to the number of staff to report on a daily basis. And we will all be able to see the results of that over the next few months, whether that comes to fruition or not.
Sorry, can I follow up? So of the 622 staff, that's of the staff who are currently in the juvenile halls? Is that?
That is the number that bid to go to Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall.
Okay, but of that 622, half have medical restrictions. That means they are not coming to work, or that means that they can only work in certain capacities?
They will only be able to work in certain capacities. Yes, they're medically restricted, yes.
And what is the ratio that you're seeking to implement in each unit at any given time? There are plenty of times I think we go to visit, for example, Barry J, where there's one staff covering the entire unit. So is there an ideal number that you all?
We're looking at an ideal number of about 6 per shift.
6 per shift per unit?
6 per shift per unit, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Per unit or per building?
Well, when we say, let's say building. So let's say you had a building such as N&O, it will be 6 staff in unit N&O.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm always troubled about staffing, and we've got 50% that have some kind of medical issue. That seems inordinately high. We have some tremendously great staff who show up on a regular basis, working lengthy shifts, sometimes against their will, to do it. Sunday night, Father's Day, Silmar, a county supervisor stopped in there. She wound up in a day room with some of the youth, which she happened to know the youth was good. She didn't feel unsafe, but there was no DSO with her. She was commenting on the lack of staffing at that point in time. In fact, I got the phone call. I get the phone call, this is not a good thing. But the point is, and I'm probably going to talk to staff out there, I'll come sit with you for 12 hours if you're afraid to be in there. I'm not afraid to be in there. We need to get people back to work.
Thank you, Commissioner Meredith. I just wanted to confirm really quickly. So I hear your ideal number, but the staff ratio is going to be based on the pop of the unit rather than the ideal, right? We're not going to have units that are overstaffed, which is not a common issue at all, but that's not going to be the case.
No, we definitely won't have units that are overstaffed.
Okay.
Yes. Priya.
So I pretty 1 to 8. So move, and I don't set myself up. But with this move, you see, I'm hesitant on what I'm ready to say. But with this move, so Barry J is going to end up okay also. I think we're both going to end up okay. Sometime a reset is what it is a reset. So we're both the facilities are looking at staffing with 6 staff per unit, A and B. And in addition to that, lowering the pop so you have maybe only 5 or 6 kids on the side of a building. Total 12 kids in the entire building. So the plan is creating the small group model. We know that that works. So so 1 to 8 is the minimum. That's what we have to be. Now, if we have more staff than that, that's great. And it looks like we might have more because of shakeout.
Appreciate the clarity. Oh, wait, sorry, Commissioner Lewis and then Commissioner CLAs. Mundo.
I'm about to beat the dead horse again. I want to make a motion for this. I want those metal detectors, and I'm not going to quit until we have a motion going to the board. Not metal detectors, scanners, and dogs. I'm not like, what do I need to do? I want that motion to go to the board. Need the protection for these kids. That, based on my experience. So first of all, let me share this with you. When I was in prison, I'm gonna share a little before I reform myself. I was an active gang member when I went to prison. This is not something I'm proud of. But my wife back then used to bring in marijuana for me. Take all the stems out, wrap it up, walk into the visiting room. She would dump it in the trash can. The porter would take it to the hoop, as we call it, bring it back. Get a third, I would keep 2/3. That's just being 100% honest, okay? If she was not able to do that, if she had a scanner that she had to walk through, she wouldn't be able to do it. So, like, the importance of this motion, I'd like to, a motion to expedite the purchase of these particular scanners and the installation of with an end date of when they should be in place for not just Barry J, but Los Padrinos. Both were used. Because the dogs are being worked on, but I think the dogs are just, that's like, I think 2 measures of security for this.
Commissioner Lewis, County Council has said we can totally do this motion, but for the agenda purposes, since it's the last item, we should finish this BSCC discussion, then reopen the item and take your motion, if that's okay with you.
It's fine with me.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So it's related to it. Circle back. RCLAs?
Well, let me say first to that, I think that's probably fine, but if you want to ask for LP to open with one of those scanners in place day one, actually it would go to, it should hold off anyways. Okay. I just had a quick question on this then. With 312 non-leave staff at Los Padrinos, are we still expecting field staff to be pulled from the field to work in Los Padrinos? And if so, how many and how often?
Yes, we are. We do anticipate having field staff still report to Los Padrinos until we stabilize, until we can see whether or not we're going to have the same attendance issues that we had in the past. Anticipate actually having focused deployments of field staff into those facilities, and once we stabilize, we will stop focused deployments of staff and possibly even release some of the staff that were previously deployed to our juvenile facilities back in April. Because out of the, if you really look at those numbers, out of 622, have even a 33% of them return. That's significant. That's 100 additional staff, 33% return. That will boost our staffing number, go beyond 33%, and we're looking well. And at that point, without question, we'll be able to get to school, medical appointments, and the like. So that is definitely the hope, and I'm sure that our personnel that have been unfortunately redeployed to our facilities to assist with our staffing needs, I'm sure that they're hoping that things stabilize and that we have a return personnel that are currently out on medical leave.
Very well. Commissioner.
Understand this, the 620 individuals that have volunteered to LP, are they your general mix of the current model for those GSN, DSOs, SDSOs?
Yes, it is. That's correct.
So am I to believe that the DPOs will not be a part of the operation in the future as regular staff, incorporated in some casework type capacity? Or future, is the model just going to go back to the basic model just described, GSN, DSO, SDSOs?
No, it won't only be, it will actually be DSOs, DPOs, senior DSOs, DPO2s, SDPOs, and SDSOs,
So
and then
you-
director. Because currently, we actually do have DPOs that are working in the facility. They were promoted into facilities, and that is their assignment. They were never in the field unless they promoted into the facility, which was, of course, voluntary. But as far as the other DPOs that were deployed there, that wasn't voluntary, they were deployed there. Those, if we can get our numbers stabilized, those individuals will eventually make that transition back into their field operations.
Now, I'm assuming the DPOs that promoted from DSO?
Yes, the DPOs that are promoted from DSO, yes.
And
Those that are-
SDPOs, no, they just serve basically in the same capacity as DSOs, and
That's correct, yes.
basically they do supervision, essentially.
They do supervision, and many of them do casework. And that was the initial design, that many of them were going to do casework. However, due to the prevailing shortages, there was a shift away from the original intent of bringing them in initially. So, yeah, things.
So it's almost the same model is going to be placed inside the facility.
It'll be very similar, but the classifications will be mixed, yes.
So, I don't know, I have a time not expecting the same thing in a year. The same model that brought us here is being implemented.
I would say that when you say the model, the staffing model is very similar to what we had, but we are trying to make that transition to where our DSOs and senior DSOs are going to be DPO1s and DPO2s. So that's going to be, but that's going to be something that's long-term at this point. When you really look at the numbers that we have at 622, that will probably result from, such a transition would have to result from internal promotions to those positions where the job responsibilities at the same time to shift. And that would be incumbent upon us to shift our policies and procedures as to what those responsibilities would be.
Thank you.
So before we move on to the next agenda item, it sounds like to propose a motion, but I just wanted to ask, because it sounds Chief Sanders suggesting that there's already something in the works around these devices. Contracting with some purchase is happening. Scanners, yeah. Security, whatever security.
So what the talk this morning was about specifically about the dogs.
Okay, so it wasn't about.
Yeah, so that's already in the contract. We're just trying to see what, if there's.
That adds to it too. If there's extra money. So first, request that we submit a motion to the board to expedite the purchase the installation of airport-style scanners at the interest of both Los Padrinos and Mary J. Nightoff. And while I know probation is reviewing the contract with dogs, if there's extra money, to make sure that there is extra money for us to have dogs permanently housed at both Barry J. Nightoff and Los Padrinos, requiring everyone that enters, staff, visitors, contractors, to go through these two separate screening measures, ensure that contraband that can harm by intaking it, or these young people by drastically reduced.
Sorry that I missed it, but did you say just Barry J? Or
No, both Barry J. Nightoff and Los Padrinos.
Okay, thank you.
Can we get a second? We'll have discussion after. Okay. Initial motion made by Commissioner Lewis, seconded by Commissioner Meredith. Opened up for discussion.
Systems. Often earlier says they do have, yes, they do have a part of the motion should include having POC staff reach out and liaison with sheriffs to get all the information we need for this motion to come back so we can present it to the board. Said, here are the facts, figures, what is needed, and it's already in place with LASD. That's what my addition would be to it.
That's up to Commissioner Lewis whether he accepts that.
Are they the same style scanners you're talking about?
It's my understanding they're the same exact scanners we're talking about, like CDCR has. And that's, we can verify that, but that's what we're looking for. Those scanners, if sheriffs have it, my addition would be to look at it, get all the information we have, the specs, the financing, the training staff, the maintenance, so we can have that the motion of the board. We need to have that so they can at least look at it, and if they're going to have to, if they vote on it, give it to the CEO's office.
My only question, the way I view this is from the prism of everyday potential of waking up to another Brian, and I don't want to wake up.
I do agree, but maybe if the board doesn't have the necessary information to accept the motion, then providing that information, easier to expedite
Absolutely,
it.
as long as we expedite it. I have no problem with gathering the information and adding Mr. Meredith suggested. Those should be simple phone calls to both SYTF at CDCR and the Sheriff's Department. I would believe it.
I know the justice deputies are listening, so they know it's coming.
Should the motion be restated?
I just wanted to say, I don't think we should amend the motion to include the camps, but once this is done, we should maybe consider doing the camps also.
I think we should ask for public comment one more time since we've gone back. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to make public comment about this? Or if you are online, if you can use the raise your hand function or dial *3 on.
Supervisors?
Can you, I'm going to stop your time. Can you pull the microphone?
Thank you all for concerns. I have a lot of concerns through. I know recently the visitations are going on again. I appreciate that. Past 6 weeks ago, my main concern right now is school. They're not getting the equivalent education they're supposed to be getting in class right now, school right now. My son been in 6 months and through the 6 months I've had analyzed him and his test scores went low. He was an A student. My concern is transferring him now to the main concern is safety, patient, and his well-being when his youth right now, boundaries with me and him are okay, But there's ways that we could just stop separating families and understand our background, our history, and these youth are turning into men and are citizens of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we accept your comment and we appreciate it, but we want to stay on topic, and this is comment relating to contraband and substance use.
Good afternoon, Rudy Hernandez, Reserve Deputy Probation Officer with LA County. As always, I come to this board as a father and as a community member in regards to the facilities. I've done assessments at the halls, whatnot in the past, and I think just what's being provided today as far as the motion with those detection systems, I just want to give 100% support for it. I know a lot of just our community members, which are reserved, we're 100% volunteer force. They probably agree with it, just because, like I said, we do not, unfortunately, of just the situation that happened with the Ryan that passed away. It was kind of hard, for a lot of us that took it. Like I said, I come as a father, and just having a teenage son that was, a year ago, kind of on the wrong path, like I mentioned before to this board, I could kind of, just, it's scary to think what would happen. And if we could do anything now to prevent stuff like that from happening. So like I said, just want to make those comments, fully approve, or, our support, I should say, of that motion that's in place, that was put in place. So hopefully it gets pushed through, but for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'd also just like to say thank you for coming to the two parents in the room. It's actually something our team has been discussing at length, is how we can incorporate more parents' voices into the commission. So please come back. And if you can't come back, watch virtually and invite the other folks that you're connected with. It's Belinda's main goal. That's why I asked you to speak with her. And it's definitely a group of people that we have been striving to perspective. So thank you for being here. Anybody online?
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Lewis, I have your motion written as to expedite the purchase of airport-style scanners for the entrances of Barry J. Nydorf and Los Padrinos, and encourage fulfillment of the canine search contracts to see if dogs can be permanently available at the facilities. Does that sound right?
Expedite both purchase and installation.
Purchase and implementation. Installation. It actually says that right here, and thank you. Purchase and installation of airport-style scanners, and seconded by Commissioner Meredith. And then there was a friendly amendment that was accepted to ask POC staff to obtain the CDCR plan for how they have implemented and the costs, and report that back in forms of a recommendation to the board.
Sheriffs and CDCR. I think
Sheriff and CDCR.
Should vote.
Commissioners, please vote yes, no, or abstain. Commissioner Canales? Commissioner Carrillo is absent. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes?
Yes.
Commissioner Kakani? Commissioner Lewis?
yes.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
Commissioner Mundo? Commissioner Terry?
Yes.
Chair Jackson?
Absolutely.
Okay, so with Commissioner Carrillo being absent, the motion passes 8-0.
Moving on to item number 6, where our director date spray, structured release, and the decarceration of girls, and the POC's outstanding requests for information.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be very brief. As usual, this is included on the agenda mostly so that we could provide a number of important reports to the public. So I ask folks to please take a look at the attachments to the agenda, which include recent OC spray reports. And with regard to the decarceration efforts and the structured release efforts that we discussed at the last meeting, I wanted to report that there have been two steps forward in terms of obtaining data related to the monthly intake log that has been the subject of discussion here for about 8 months. One is that we did receive from the department a point-in-time data. It's a reflection of the statistics of demographics of the youth who were incarcerated on May this year. It provides a lot of the information we requested, including charging agency, gender, race, ethnicity, LADS, the LA Detention Screener scores. So it's helpful. However, in our preliminary analysis of it, there are a couple of issues that we believe must be remedied before we share it publicly, because for example, the total count of the number is not reflective of what we believe total count to be on that day. So we're working with the department to be able to get a version of the report that feels reasonable to be shared with the public. And in the meantime, we'll continue to do analysis. Janisha Smith has already actually begun some of that in looking at the percentages of cases filed by certain agencies, for certain law enforcement agencies, looking at the LADS scores, those screener scores, and how that works in terms of getting a profile of our current population. The other step forward is that the department has informed me that they are working on a much more robust reporting structure to alleviate some of the problems they have with data collection and reporting around intake, that they expect to have ready by August, and that we should expect to be receiving the data on a monthly basis as requested by August. So that's my update on that issue, and I'm hopeful that by the next meeting we'll have that snapshot data available to be shared with. I know there are lots of people interested in it, in particular as it relates to the decarceration efforts, to get a sense of how many kids we have incarcerated currently on what level of charges. I think that's one of the most interesting factors. There's been a lot of discussion about how many of our kids are in on 707B offenses versus on warrants or other violations of the detention program. So looking forward to being able to share that information, and sorry that it's not available today.
Any comment on this update?
So we did have a written public comment that was submitted and shared with the commissioners before and is attached to the agenda. If there's anyone in the room who'd like to make public comment on that report, or anyone who's signed up online, click the raise your hand function or dial *3.
All righty. Commissioner, or comments on?
Daily snapshot shared. It was that's not related to the intake.
Well, yes and no. So it's definitely not the intake log. However, part of the so there are a couple of reasons for requesting the intake log, in my understanding from what you suggested and why I wanted to see it. One was to get a sense of who's coming in, how frequently, and what the population looks like on a month-to-month basis. We can't get that from a snapshot. What we can get from a snapshot is an idea of the demographics of the kids on the day, which was another purpose of the intake log. So it is not a replacement for the intake log, but it does provide us with some of the information we were hoping. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Mundo? I mean, I know it doesn't make you happy, but does it answer your question?
It's not that it doesn't make me happy. The intake log is much more than that. A snapshot that I reviewed before, there was inconsistencies with it that are inherent with the snapshot. Like some of the agencies, it shows that the youth was taken to Barry J. But those agencies actually don't go to Barry J. It just happens that that's where the youth is now. And the intake actually probably occurred at Central. And so, and my requesting that intake log was about the system, not just probation. And those snapshots will not satisfy half the questions, provide half the information that the intake log. So if it's not close to what the intake log is doing, I just don't understand why they just don't resume manual. I visited intake. They're only averaging 6 intake a day. That's in a 24-hour period. They have staff working from home, which is crazy to me because no officer is going to drop off a kid at somebody's home. And I was told that they provide support services. I don't know what type of support intake would need if only 6 kids are coming in a day, staff 24 hours. So this whole idea that the manual one can continue, just, I don't understand that. And unless they're able to provide something exactly like, I just don't see them satisfying the rest.
I agree with you. And I think that the intake log, in addition to what you just described, also allows for a cross analysis. So given a snapshot, I can tell you how many girls we have in custody, and I can tell you how many youth we have in custody who have 707B charges. What I can't tell you is how many girls have 707B charges. That's why the intake log is important from my perspective as well. I do feel optimistic that the department is working toward a solution to get us the data that we need, that we need, just is going to be.
Oh, I've been waiting 5 years from some school-based information, so I think my term is up in 7, so maybe I'll get something. I just think it's the same thing. They're dodging. It's just the same thing that they've been doing before this body motion. It's the same thing they did with the old body. And quite frankly, the interview with the chief the other day made me think that it's going to continue. This whole excuse that they don't have the systems to provide accurate data. I get that. But they make decisions based on the data they collect now. The field, intake. So if it's good enough to make decisions, it's good enough to get a snapshot. I'm not sure why it's not good enough to share.
Fair point. Any other? Commissioner Kakani.
I thought you had shared that you would be sharing an update related to the structured release. Did I mishear?
So that my update related to structured release and girls decarceration was about the data.
Okay. Is there, I know that this wasn't like a specific agenda item at our last meeting, but just wondering if there was kind of any data that you had related to how many young folks had been released pursuant to that March 21st motion, how many young folks had been conferenced or MDT'd, I don't know what the correct verb is. Just any sort of transparency around that process. And I think this is the problem with probation holding it, is that there's never any transparency. And when we're confronted with the closure of 2 facilities, the reopening of one on July 23rd, a month away, without any sort of operational plan, without any sort of, I don't know, assurance that, staff is going to be there when we're at a point where 20 to 25% of staff are currently calling out, and how it is that we're not going to replicate some of the violations that are already existing, whether it's related to programming, education, rec time. I mean, we couldn't even be assured when we were at LP that young folks could be brought to the library. So with all of that, it feels like we need to be getting as many young folks out as possible. And it feels really important that we are talking about how many young folks are getting out so that all of this doesn't exist behind closed doors and then there's no accountability for this process. And I know that that's not like entirely in your hands, but just putting it out there.
Well, I will say what I'm willing to accept in my hands is to request the information that you're asking for. So I can request it from probation, and they actually have been responsive about this recently as far as how many MDTs have happened under structured release. I actually read in the minutes yesterday from our last meeting, Ms. Harada had said it was 25 out of the cohort of 54. Since our meeting, there have been more that have happened. She said they were doing 8 to 4.
So anywhere from 2 to 6, I think,
2 to
was
6,
her
okay.
range.
So I'm happy to ask that specifically from probation. And I also can ask for the information from the PD panel, who among the 3 of them are able to report on those numbers and to you. I think what I could do is draft a little memo response and share it with you all, the commissioners, and then put it up on our website. Or maybe even send it out in since we have.
And in addition to the number of MDTs, also the number of young folks that have actually been released by way of this process.
Yes, that's what I meant. So the number of MDTs and the yes, and I actually know because the others have shared this, that there have been a few who are on that list of 54 who have been released out in MDT, sometimes because the process has led to a conversation that happens outside the formal process, which is great news, sometimes because they would have been released anyway. So I will make sure to get a number out of that 54.
Thank you. And then I don't know if you have, this was asked when we were at LP last week, but if there's any confirmation, either perhaps Mr. Woods or Wendy, if you know, whether we can confirm that OC spray will not be brought over to LP. I think we've heard the chief mention it, but like nothing feels like it's totally official, because when we were talking to the superintendents, is that right? They said that they thought so, but weren't sure, hadn't received anything official. So I don't know if there's any information around that.
I'll give you a definitive answer. OC will not be brought to.
Thank you so much for that.
Since it's still part of my report, I would just like to say that's great news. Thank you.
Right, we are moving on to matters not posted where commission discuss or place on future meeting agendas items that or that you just like for us to discuss in the future. Commissioner Meredith?
I had originally put on a request for August for the reserve, presentation on the reserve. I'd like to move that to September, but I'd like to have in August as a presentation by HR on how many staff are unable to come to work for medical reasons or are light duty, because we have a significant, it's 45%, 50% not showing. It only seems to be the halls and camps that are having the problem. Field doesn't have it. As a result, we're pulling from the field, driving them of services in the field. And I know the chief gave a directive that every person sworn work a shift in facilities. And that should not be in the office. They should be actually in the day room or tiers with the youth. I'd like to make sure that that's being followed up on. But more importantly, I want to know how many we have on, how long they've been off, why they can't come back to work. What are we doing to get them back to work, get them off the books? Because, you know, we have so many hardworking, dedicated employees pulling extra shifts that public safety is a primary concern. Safety in the facilities, both for staff and for the youth, is a concern. And this really impacts it. So I'd like HR to give me a brief on that.
Department-wide or just juvenile institutions?
I'd like to have department-wide, but I really would like, I bet it's going to show that it's significant halls and camps.
So maybe department-wide with a breakdown of juvenile institutions separately.
Perfect.
Great.
But I'd like the HR to be here to.
Confidentiality concerns, obviously they won't divulge any
No,
like specific.
we actually got that information from institutions a few weeks ago, maybe it was even longer ago than that. So I know they're able to provide.
Commissioners, anything you'd like to have placed on a future agenda? I think Commissioner Kakani, you mentioned electronic monitoring at some point. Is that something that's in the forecast?
I believe so. I think the plan is for that to be in August.
Okay. Just wanted to first.
I had a question for Wendy, I believe. You can answer with respect to Commissioner Meredith's suggestion. We were waiting for some right sizing report from the county, and I think it's past due.
No, it's complete. It was, I believe it was April 18th that it was provided publicly.
Oh,
Sent a
that long
copy of
ago.
it.
I guess I was busy that week. Okay, sorry, thanks.
In fact, I'll ask Ismail if we can maybe put a link to it on our website under reports, but I'll also send it out to the commission.
Any other additions?
Had a question. I read a public comment yesterday about an attack that occurred in Unit NO. Not to give too many of the details, where a supervisor placated a couple of youth at 2 a.m. in the morning with sandwiches, and then allowed them to stay in the room without the door open. And I just want to confirm that. And if it is confirmed, I was told that you're still able to break the doors open. And if that's correct.
I will speak to that. So the whole matter, I know you don't want to hear this, is under investigation, so we are looking at it. So I know exactly what since you're speaking about. Okay, so we're.
So my bigger concern is, are those doors not secure completely?
There's a lock on it, and it should be secured.
And they're not able to breach them, so.
You're talking about, I want to be clear on your question. So you're asking if doors can be secured? Or
No, are they so secure that they cannot be breached by a youth that wants to get out?
The door is locked properly. The door is locked and it clicks and the cylinder goes in. It should not be able to be.
So if somebody did breach it, it could have been because they have done something to the lock itself before.
Possible.
Okay, so I'm just concerned about them being secured when.
Got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that a widespread issue, though? I know during my inspections, a lot of the time, like the doors not locking or the youth finding ways to kind of like jam them. It's been frequent enough to bring up.
So I'm gonna say that will be a problem of the past.
Okay.
So part of that is actually when you inspect and making sure you lock. But this week we're actually changing the locks, so that purchase is moving at both Barry J and.
Are we able to know about upcoming changes like that? Like locks are changing, dogs are coming in, these contracts, like, are we able to get those kinds of updates? I think it would be helpful for us to know what kind of changes are in the works to the facilities.
Facility improvements and safety
Yeah.
improvements
Yeah.
as they go. Yeah.
I mean, because we completely fell off that worksheet, got those updates, which was incredibly helpful to us for Central. But yeah, anything like that would be helpful. Any other commissioners have comments on matters not posted?
I was just going to share for purposes of the fact that both of these bureau chiefs were not there when that happened.
That's
What
true.
we received was during the time that Central was under improvements while it was closed and even afterwards, there was a spreadsheet with the security improvements as they were progressing that we were receiving an update that showed the improvements that were being made. It was extremely helpful. It's my understanding that it's no longer being collected at Central, but if there were such a thing at the other facilities as changes happen for SYTF or, that would be great. I can send you a copy of this to receive.
I'm sorry, is the staff okay in recovering? Is that staff return to work?
He's recovering. I don't believe.
Just one thing, sorry.
Absolutely.
I was really hoping that we could do something related to programming. I don't know. Like I was just looking at this report provided by DYD for the week of, I guess, Wednesday, March 8th through Tuesday, March 14th, 7 folks in Unit P, and there's no programming. I mean, there's a Let's Clean worksheet, improve your self-esteem, visits canceled that week, and there's a TED Talk worksheet, and all of it feels super sad to me. But it would be so great to to have, I think we often call probation here to answer questions, but rarely do we hear from the other experts who are connected to young folks. And so if there was a way for us to build out an agenda item, to build out an agenda item where we're hearing from, whether it's the credible messengers who are in the halls and at Kilpatrick, whether it's hearing from folks from Arts from Healing and Justice Network who are inside, or the folks who contract with Department of Arts and Culture to talk about the challenges and the way in which they connect with young folks is an opportunity for us to learn how folks do things differently. I think might be a valuable agenda item. Sure.
100%. In fact, at the meet and greet that Chief Guillermo and I had last week, I believe, during public comment, someone that I actually know pretty well posed the same question, and we absolutely agree that that would be great to do in either town hall format or at a future meeting. So, okay. If that is the end of agenda item number 8, I think it is safe to move on to item number 9 and adjourn the meeting, which I need a motion to do.
Actually, I think we need to do general public comment. Does anyone in the room want to give general public comment? Yes, please.
I apologize.
And if you are online and want to give general public comment, please raise your hand, click the little hand button, or dial *3 if you're on your phone.
I need my whole 2 minutes because I timed this.
Okay. Feel free.
For that. Second. I'm here to share testimony based off experience, the voice of a mother as well as a school site council board member at Barry J, to provide more than just a public comment, but supporting evidence, calling out on all state officials to immediately act now. I make a motion calling for the Department of Justice to investigate and for probation to be held accountable for their lack of compliance, not abiding government policies, corruption, child abuse, and many violations of civil rights. At my first board meeting, voicing my concerns for school attendance, learning they were not only denied access to educational service, but also denied access to their IEPs, leaving every single one unaided. My son being denied access to school for 5 consecutive months, once a straight A student not provided even the basic of services he's entitled to according to the law. Violations under Section 504, failure to provide free appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment, intentionally sabotaging kids, a repeated cycle, funding more for their inhumane confinement rather than funding their educational and basic needs. They made it clear the disapproval of knowledgeable individuals withholding positions that gains insight and intelligence of the illegal practices occurring daily, calling for a re-election, voted in and securing my position twice, excluding me from future meetings, creating false accusations for my absence without prior notification or providing proper documents and agendas, reaching out to the alternate unable to attend due to short notice. The community seat was left intentionally vacated, not allowed a vote or insight. Violations of the Brown Act. I motion for immediate investigation on this matter as well. Only given 2 minutes, you can ensure my return with more supporting proof and reports of illegal practices by those who were supposed to provide support, education, safety, and rehabilitation. If the emperor is in fact not wearing any clothes, then we must acknowledge this and move on to more subtle and sound methods with supporting scientific data and percentages in order to fix what's broken, correcting LACO and probation corruption.
Thank you so much. We definitely look forward to hearing from you again and working with you. Any other public comment online? Okay, back to agenda number 9 where we adjourn the meeting. Commissioners, I need motions to adjourn today's meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
First motion by Vice Chair Connie, seconded by
I'll second.
Commissioner Mundo. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote. Aye. Opposition? Any opposition? Right, it is 2:59, and I conclude this meeting, adjourn this meeting.